you shouldn't have any restrictions on yourself. You don't have a reputation to lose. So there's no point in trying to be careful. I think it's important to be reckless. I think you should be really just trying everything that interests you. Eventually, and most artists go through this cycle of development, is they start out really curious and excited. Then they start to get a little skill behind them and they start to judge their work. And then they step back and they think, oh, I'm terrible at this. What was I thinking? Why am I even pursuing this? And most human beings will stop at that second phase when they're feeling self-judgmental.
And that, my friends, is just a little taste of what's to come. Today's guest is an artist whose work is powerful and as alive as the elements that she paints with. Alicia Tormey is an internationally recognized artist and educator known for her stunning encaustic and mixed media paintings that explore themes of growth, transformation, and the natural world. She literally paints with fire, using heat, wax, and resin to create luminous works that seem to breathe life and movement right off the canvas. Her art has been exhibited and collected around the world, and she's also the founder of the Studio Source, where she mentors and empowers other artists to build thriving creative businesses with authenticity and heart. Alicia's most recent solo exhibition, Pyrophytic, is inspired by the resilience of nature and the idea that fire isn't just destruction, but a catalyst for rebirth. Today, we're talking about creativity, resilience, and what it means to stay in flow as a woman, an artist, and a human being navigating a world that often feels like it's on fire. And now, my conversation with Alicia Tormey. You're listening to Midlife Strategies for Badass Women, the no BS podcast for women over 40 who are sick of playing by someone else's rules. I'm your host, Sue Willoughby, badass midlife strategist, truth teller, and professional fire starter for midlife reinvention. Around here, we don't do fluff. We do real talk, bold strategies, and badass breakthroughs. Because midlife isn't a crisis, it's your damn power move. If you're all in, unapologetic, and ready to reinvent, let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to another amazing episode of Midlife Strategies for Badass Women. Now, my guest today is a guest that I had on very, very, very early on in my podcast. I think it was probably the second or third interview that I did. And she's back. And she's back because she was doing a solo show at her gallery in Seattle. And I'll let her tell you more about that. So please welcome back to the mic, Alicia Tormey. Hi, Alicia. How are you doing today?
Hi, Sue. I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. I'm so excited to have you here because I know, you're in town. You're not in Idaho, even though we're doing a remote interview. I want to talk about your show because I was fortunate enough to help Alicia pack up her show in Idaho, and then we drove it back out here, and now it's beautifully installed in the gallery, and I'm so excited for you because I was also at the opening. So please tell us a little bit about your show. It's got a very special name, and I want you to talk a little bit more about that if you could.
Sure. I thank you, and I really feel grateful for the opportunity to talk about my work and to talk about this latest body of work that is currently on display in Seattle at the Patricia Rauser Gallery down on First Avenue. It feels wonderful to be back in the city that I used to call home for many decades. And thank you for your incredible assistance because it is a Herculean task to put together a body of work. And then it is an even bigger task and a heavier lift to get that work carefully packed for transport, delivered and installed in an exhibition. And it seems like the creation of a show that there, of course, is a lot of energy that goes into the development of the actual work, but there are so many moving parts to an exhibition. I'm very, very excited to talk about this work. The show is called Pyrophytic. And if you're not familiar with that term, it actually refers to plants that possess a specific property to regenerate only after they've been exposed to extreme heat and or smoke, such as that you would find during a wildfire. And as I was making this show in my studio in Idaho, I could actually smell the smoke from distant wildfires. And it got me thinking about how fire transforms the landscape and how the landscape is reborn after a fire, and just the tenacity of nature and its ability to rebound. And again, I was thinking about fire and nature, um, about um, adversity and how it changes us as people, just like the pyrophytic plants that are the inspiration for this show. And in my work, if you're not familiar with how I create my art, I use an ancient technique and medium. The medium I use is encaustic, which is a wax-based medium. And because it's wax-based, it requires heat to set and manipulate the medium. So I use a blowtorch in the creation of my art, and the all the concepts came together simultaneously for me in the studio as I was thinking about my regional wildfires, as I was thinking about the resilience of nature after a fire and how certain plants respond from being exposed to that heat. Thinking about the human spirit and how it can come back from um, very adverse circumstances. And then I was looking at my art itself under the flame of my actual blowtorch, and it all just clicked together into one concept to present this latest body of work.
And it's interesting because, well, it was funny when we were watching television show last night. If I don't know if anybody's seen it or not, it's called High Potential. And there is a scene where they're driving through the desert and she's looking for a specific plant. I think it was the poodle plant or something. And it was a pyrophytic plant, correct? Where that had
Yes. Well, I mean,
that was
you
so
inter-
bizarre that
I
it,
know. You introduced me to this show. I hadn't heard of it, but I love the premise. And for your listeners who may not be familiar with it, the lead character has an extremely high IQ, and she's able to puzzle together mysteries. So it's a sequential murder mystery series. And it's good fun. But in this particular episode that where we were watching the day after my show opened, she makes a reference to pyrophytic plants. And it just, my head just exploded. I thought, okay, how often do you hear that term? A. And B, that it's on this show, a show that I actually never would have watched if you hadn't introduced me to it. And it absolutely blew my mind. And I felt like, okay, wow, that's a little sign from the universe that, hey, you're on the right path here with your concept.
Yeah, that was really funny, though. I just had to throw that in there just for the heck of it. But I also noticed that in this show, you really leaned heavily into your botanicals. Primarily, you do landscapes and botanicals. Those are your two sort of subject matters. For if anybody hasn't seen Alicia's work, you can follow her on Instagram, and it is amazing work. But did you
Thank
lean
you.
more heavily into the botanicals because of the whole pyrophytic theme?
Absolutely. It normally when I do an exhibition, I do a balance. About half the work is landscapes and the other half botanicals. And originally I started mixing those two subjects with a different concept. The concept was that as if you had gone into one of my landscapes to research and study and forage and returned with plant samples to preserve.
Huh.
And that's what the botanicals represent. And over the years, I've just started finding myself making more of the botanicals and less of the landscapes just organically. Enjoy creating both subjects as a painter and an artist, but the botanicals have always had a lot of traction. People really connect to them. And this year in particular, I decided to really lean in to that subject for a multitude of reasons, but it really is pivotal to the concept of the show, these organic shapes and forms that represent um, tenacity and resilience.
I want to shift gears a little bit because I want to ask you, in your creative mind, um, how do you, and this was a question that kind of came up at your artist talk, at your opening a couple of days ago. I mean, similarly, how do you, how do these organic creations come to life? Do you picture them in your mind? Is it something that just happens? How do they transpire? Where do they come from?
Everything I create is born from my imagination. But something that I was able to touch on in my artist talk is a phenomenon known as pareidolia. And that is the phenomenon of seeing things that aren't there. And an example of this experience is cloud gazing. So if you look into the sky and you see beautiful puffy white clouds, it doesn't take long for your mind to start seeing other things, shapes, faces, a rabbit hopping across the sky, or George Washington's profile. Um, and that is because the human brain just wants to make sense of everything we're seeing. It wants to identify it and process it and file it away in its proper place. So when we see something really abstracted, our brain gets really busy trying to make sense of it. And when I'm painting, that same phenomenon happens to me in the studio as I'm working on my art. I am laying down actually very abstracted um, simple forms and areas of color. And then I let that pareidolia effect start to get to work on me. And I start to see how I can develop that imagery into these really otherworldly spaces and forms because it is all being born of my imagination.
Yeah, that's really cool, and I also think because of the nature of encaustic and when you hit it with a torch and it has a mind of its own, right? Because it's an organic material, and uh, so then the bunny that you saw hopping across the across the canvas a minute ago might turn into something else as soon as you hit it with the blowtorch, right? It could flare out and turn into something completely different, and then you're whatever that what was the word that you used again?
Pareidolia.
Yeah, pareidolia has to kick in again, right? I don't know, I'm just asking.
Yes, it's
It's like,
wonderful.
yeah.
It's actually an enjoyable experience for anyone who's ever enjoyed cloud gazing. You know what I'm talking about. The um, encaustic is an interesting medium because it's not like a traditional paint medium where you're working wet and dry.
Uh-huh.
With encaustic, you work hot and cold, and you also work liquid to solid and solid to liquid. So during that process, the work is going back and forth between these two very different states of solid and liquid. And the blowtorch or the heat source for other encaustic artists use a variety of different heat sources
Mhm.
to manipulate their medium. I happen to use a blowtorch. Um, but so it'll go from a solid to a liquid right under my flame. And in essence, I'm using the flame like a paintbrush to transform my
Hmm.
materials into what my mind is trying to make sense of, beneath the flame and beneath my brush. It's actually a very exciting process, and I've had the privilege of working with this material now for nearly 3 decades.
Wow.
And I still find it very challenging, but also incredibly rewarding as well.
Do you think that's why you stuck with it for so long?
Absolutely. It's because it's so challenging. I feel like I'm still chasing it, still trying to understand it, and it's still showing me its potential and its capacity for change. And uh, it has really kept me fully engaged for all these many years, and still so.
So let's switch gears again just a little bit. I want to talk about the business of art because you are not only a master artist, you also really are able to grasp the business end um, of art, which is kind of a unique blend, I feel. I think a lot of artists are so creative that shifting and creating the business end of it or having a good handle on the business end of it is sometimes challenging. Um, how do you feel that you came to this unique blend of not only being very creative, but then also being able to understand the business of art? Does that make sense?
Yes, well, I think I think first of all, you do have to accept the fact that your art practice is also simultaneously a business operation. I
Mhm.
think there are artists who struggle with that because making art is a very sacred practice, especially if you're doing it for a lifetime or for, years and years. And I feel that there are some creators who feel hesitant to embrace the business aspects of it because of that. They feel like by calling it a business or approaching it with a business mind is somehow diminishing the value of their sacred creative work. And I think as artists, we have to hold space for both of those things simultaneously
Mhm.
because creating art takes a tremendous amount of resources. It takes time, it takes physical energy, it takes space, it takes the actual materials themselves. And without the business, without folding in the business practices alongside the creative practices, it would be very difficult to sustain a creative studio practice without being heavily subsidized. And most artists aren't. And even those who are, um, without some kind of revenue generation, it's just not sustainable over the long term. And so once you start thinking about revenue and how you're going to cover all of those expenses, for that huge output of resources that is happening. You really do have to fully embrace the business side of an art practice. But for me, I've always found business to actually contain a lot of creativity within it. And in the past, if I've felt resistance to that, I would just remind myself that this is just another form of creative expression. And how can I approach this business task or this administrative task in a creative manner and in a way that keeps me interested so I can complete that task? Because the problem with being an artist or creative is the studio is always calling. So if you're writing an email or if you're changing your website, you're constantly feeling the nag of the studio, like I should be in there painting. Um, but for me, I found that when I was denying the business side of my practice and I was in the studio, I would feel the business side beckoning and calling. And it wasn't until I recognized that I need to fully embrace both of these aspects of my creative practice, I need to give them equal time and equal energy, that I was really able to sustain and build and grow my creative practice.
That's interesting that it's like this constant pull in both directions.
Yeah.
The business is pulling you to the creative's pulling you to the business, and back and forth and back and forth. How in the hell do you find some sort of balance with all of that? I mean, because they're, like you
Well,
said, they both take
okay.
a lot of resources.
I'm going to say something that might feel a little controversial right now, but
Go for it.
I I don't think balance is real.
No,
I think
I like it. Yeah.
balance is a very popular word to throw around. People are seeking work-life balance, balance, balance,
Mhm.
balance. But I don't think that there is such a thing as this perfectly balanced life and schedule and flow, because it's just not how life works. So sometimes I am heavily in the studio, and that is where all my energy's going, even though I feel like I need to balance things out. Um, and sometimes I'm heavily into the business side. And it's so I think that that people seeking balance, I feel like there's a myth there. There's no work-life balance. I feel like it's all life. Work and life are all one and the same. And between my creative work and my business work, I feel like I just go where I'm needed, where I feel drawn to be. And if I need to go more heavily into the creative work for some time, I just allow myself to be in that space when I need to be there. Um, and it really wasn't until I surrendered to this imbalance, if you will, that I actually got more momentum, both in my life and in my creative business. So that myth of balance can really hang people up. And I find that we have to find our own rhythms. We have to listen to our instincts. And go with that flow. And sometimes it's imbalanced. There are just going to be
Mhm.
aspects of your life and your work that sometimes require more of you. And I think you just need to stay to yourself and say out loud. I often do. I say, I'm here for it. If I feel a challenge coming, if I'm suddenly starting to feel overwhelmed, or if, if a hard task suddenly falls on my to-do list, I just look at that and I say, okay, I roll up my sleeves. I say out loud, I'm here for it. And it's something lifts when I do that, when I get myself into that mental state, like I'm ready, I'm capable, I'm here for it. It really shifts me from being in a resistance mindset, because um, when I feel like there's a lot to do, when I see these monumental Herculean tasks on my to-do list and coming down my way, it's very easy to get overwhelmed and just paralyzed. But when I stop, I look at it head on and I say, I'm here for it. Suddenly, um, it shifts from this resistance and this paralyzation to, okay, I'm going to make sure I get enough sleep. I'm going to make sure that I'm eating well, because I need to have my strength and stamina for this, but I can do it and I will do it. So it's really changed, diminished my sense of being overwhelmed, and increased my sense of self empowerment when I just stop and I say, I'm here for it.
That's a very unique, I'm not going to say perspective, but I mean, I think that's a very unique talent. And I think that goes not just in art, but in anything, right? I think that a lot of people, myself included, you do get paralyzed by all of the things. And even to say, I'm here for it, can still, it's a lot to even say, I'm here for it, because you know what that means.
You have to own it. I mean, you
Yeah.
really have to own it and believe it. And like most things, you have to keep saying it until you really do believe
Uh-huh.
it. But it's really just this last year, it's made a huge difference in my ability to maintain momentum, stay focused, and get through um, get through some of the day to day and feel really capable and feel okay. This is, you know, day by day, task by task. I can do it, and I'm here for it.
Well, I know that you also teach and you have retreats, and that's a whole other that is business and art all wrapped up in one package. And so do you approach when you're teaching differently than when you're just doing work for yourself for your business?
Well, teaching involves a different element
Mhm,
because, of course, there are people involved when I'm teaching. So it is different in that respect, that there's this interpersonal interaction.
mhm,
But I approach the retreats and like I do the business, like I do my studio practice. Um, I approach it as a creative endeavor. And again, that to host retreats is actually um, a very challenging thing to do. It just takes a lot of planning. It takes a lot of resources. It takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of organization. Um, but it's incredibly rewarding for me to actually be one-on-one or in a group retreat setting and to be able to share my creative practice and to watch other people evolve creatively just before my eyes and to see it transform them is so incredibly enriching for me to literally see in real time an impact, a positive impact that I am making on someone. And I host students from all over the world. And between my online classes and my in-person classes over the years, I've taught thousands of students. So they affect me just as much as I am having an effect on them. And it's a very transformative, enriching experience, that teacher student. And then when you throw in art, because um, when we create and we make art, we let a lot of our social guard down and uh, we're really tapping into a deeper part of ourselves, an emotional part of ourselves, in order to express that visually and physically in the world. And when you're working with people from that sacred space, it's incredibly powerful. I absolutely love teaching above everything that I do. And I never thought I would. I never set out to be a teacher. It really happened organically and through constant requests. And honestly, I entered into it with a lot of resistance.
uh,
And just like everything else, when I actually started to see it from a fresh perspective and leaned hard into it and gave it everything I had and said out loud, I'm here for it. It really transformed into something I could have never foreseen. And I just feel extremely privileged to be a teacher.
and I love what you said about, what people bring to the retreats, and it is a very vulnerable thing to create. I mean, creativity in and of itself is exposing yourself, like you said, and people, I think, feel very vulnerable creating because it does pull out all of the things and, lays them bare on canvas or on wax or whatever. So that you also have to hold space for them in that regard, I would imagine.
Hmm.
And the thing is, I know you said that you resisted teaching for a long time. You had Live at 5 for what, 6 years? How many episodes was that? Every Tuesday, right?
I
Was
think
it
it was 7 years.
7 years?
And
Okay, I thought it was 6. Well, 6 still. every week, I mean, you were there for it. You showed up regardless of what was going on with you personally, whether you were sick. I mean, maybe you missed 1 or 2 episodes, but
Well,
and
for
I've
your
heard
listeners who
this.
don't know what Live at 5 was, it was a weekly live program um, on Instagram.
Mhm,
I started doing it when Instagram first offered lives, and I just wanted to embrace that and see how I could fold that into what I was already doing. And so I went on weekly live for about an hour
mhm.
and just connected with other artists and answered their questions and shared my art experience, um, and assisted people on their own art journey. So for people who may not be familiar with Live at 5 is, that's what Sue just referenced. That's what you just referenced. So
Thank you for that. I was getting there, but yes, thank you for because what I was getting at too is a theme that I heard in the background at your opening over and over and over again was your
oh,
generosity of your heart, your experience, your willingness to help artists, to help people express themselves, how to, you know, become an artist in the turn it into a business. Just and I mean that right there, Live at 5 for 7 years, weekly live show, answering questions, doing demos, talking to people. How that is re- beyond generous. I mean, that is just amazing, and that is a tribute to you and why I believe you are so successful. It's because you show up with such grace and so much generosity that people feel like they've known you forever. I also heard some students who had never met you said, I feel like I know you. I feel like it's because you're willing to put yourself out there, not just for yourself and for your art, but for other people and for their creative endeavors. And I think that that is huge, whether it's in the art world, the business world, whatever. That's a rare quality.
well, thank you so much for noticing that and calling that out. That's very kind and generous of you to do. Um, but early on as an artist, and I want to pause here for a moment and step back and say that um, being an artist is such a good metaphor for so many other things in life. So there's a lot about being an artist that could be applied to just being a human, and how we
Mhm.
could maybe live as a higher, better version of ourselves. But um, early on, being an artist, I saw two distinctively different types of artists. And I saw one type of artist who really struggled despite talent, resources, it didn't matter. I saw them struggle, and they struggled with uh, ego, they struggled with scarcity mindset. They could not celebrate in the successes of their fellow artists. Um, and every effort and every gesture that they made, whether it was a creative one or a business one, was really self-serving. And I saw them struggle, and I saw them struggle for years and years, even if they were an amazing artist. Um, and then I saw other artists who were very open about their practice, who openly celebrated the successes of their creative friends, who shared resources, materials, techniques. They were just openly sharing. And even if they didn't end up having fame and accolade, I saw within them a contentment and a strong, vibrant network of creatives. And to be able to really identify those two different artist mindsets side by side and see the results of those different attitudes and creative and life approaches, it was very easy for me to choose the generosity side of that coin. Um, and I also think that it's I think it's in our natural instincts to be generous. I think we get conditioned to feel scarcity and um, fear and competition. And if
Uh-huh.
you can put those things aside, it feels to me like things just open up and flow. People want to connect with you. And for me, that is really at the core of being an artist is I'm an artist to connect with people. I make art to make a connection. And you can't really do that with a scarcity mindset. So I appreciate you talking about generosity and and thank you.
Yeah. Well, I heard it over and over again. Alicia is so generous with her time, with her, everything. So I just wanted to bring that up. And I do think what you said is so true. It's not just in art, it's in any aspect of life that if you are, and I remember when I first got into real estate, I read a series called the Go Giver series rather than the Go Getter, right? The Go
I love
Giver.
that.
Yeah, and they're little, small books, but it's all about that, like not wanting to, have every client or every whatever. It's like, no, this is not a good fit for me. This person's a better fit for, this other agent or this other whatever. But it's all about realizing that, you can let something go to make room for something else, to make room for something bigger or something different that's going to be a better fit for you. Whereas I think people think that they have to, like you said, it's that scarcity mindset. If I don't grab this thing and hold on to it, I may never have another opportunity, or I may never have another client, or I may never make another, whatever it is. So yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up. But it is, like I said, a testament to you and the people that follow you and the people that love your work. It's because all of those things that you just talked about comes through in your work, in your art. So thank you for
Well,
that.
thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that so much.
So I have, as we kind of wrap things up here, I mean, there's so many things that we could talk about, but as a teacher, as an instructor, as a generous artist, what advice or what would be kind of the biggest thing that you could tell someone who maybe they follow you, maybe this is the first time they're hearing of you, but if they are in wanting to get into some sort of creative endeavor, what kind of advice would you give them that not just like, paint 3 times a day or something like that? Well, because you've talked about so many different things that have worked for you and that you've, been spanning the decades and you keep evolving and you keep growing as a person and as an artist. But when somebody's first starting out, like you said, it could be very daunting. What can you tell someone who is just starting out or that really has a creative soul but doesn't know what to do with it? I don't know.
Um, well, the first thing I would say is absolutely explore anything that interests you in the beginning. Follow your curiosity, and really, really listen to that, and try lots of different things because later on, it's important to really narrow your focus. But in the beginning, that's the time to be wide open, experimental, and really, really curious and just have fun. Um, I see a lot of artists create or they want to create, but I see fear just literally holding them back from making the next stroke or, that everything is so precious and they're so tentative. And when you're first developing a creative habit, trying to find your creative style, not even sure what medium, if you want to write or be a photographer or be a painter, um, you shouldn't have any restrictions on yourself. You don't have a reputation to lose. So there's no point in trying to be careful. I think it's important to be reckless. I think you should be really just trying everything that interests you. But eventually, and most artists go through this cycle of development, is they start out really curious and excited. Then they start to get a little skill behind them and they start to judge their work. And then they step back and they think, oh, I'm terrible at this. What was I thinking? Why am I even pursuing this? And most human beings will stop at that second phase when they're
Mhm.
feeling self-judgmental. They have enough knowledge now to know that they're not that great. But the key is to just keep going because it really is cyclical, and you will go through these recognizable stages of creative development, but really developing any new skill. And you need to just get past that awkward second phase where you have enough knowledge now to know that, you got a ways to go. And and then it's about committing and just saying, okay, I do actually want to get good at this. So I'm going to put some of my resources into it. And those resources are your time and your attention. And and once you get into that third phase where now you've got some skill, you start to see results, your mastery is improving. And that's the time to really narrow down to one discipline and go deep, an inch wide and a mile deep, if you want to get really masterful at something. And if you dedicate yourself to your practice like that, it's natural for you to actually develop a very distinctive, singular style in the process. And I find that that's something a lot of artists really struggle with, and
Mhm.
they think they should have a style and then develop it, but really your style comes from your commitment and your exploration in the beginning. Um, so that would be my advice, is to understand that there are some struggle stages,
Yes.
natural and inevitable, and to hang in there when you find yourself in the midst of those, and really stay with it. And the longer you go, narrow your focus, go, narrow and deep, and you'll find yourself uh, where your creativity wants you to be.
I love that. I think that's great. Narrow and deep. It's true, and it's true in most things, right? If you
It
really wanna be
is.
good
Life
at
is
it.
just, art is such a good metaphor for life. All of these things can be, just switch out the word art for whatever.
There's
And
one thing there was one thing that you were talking about when and it reminded me of another question that came up during your artist talk, and, um, how do you know when you're done, and how do you, like when you feel like, "Oh, but if I do this one thing, and what if I mess it up?" And, and you did address it in a very beautiful way, and it just made me think about that when you were talking about sometimes you're gonna suck at things, and then you just gotta keep going. When do you
uh,
quit?
I know, right? I think the question that was asked during my artist talk was, how do you know when a painting is done?
Mhm.
And it is a question that I do get asked with some frequency. And for me, I when you're getting close, and like you were referring to, you could either take it too far and it goes over a cliff, or
Mhm.
you want to stop when you get it at that sweet moment when it's just
Yeah.
chef's kiss. And for me, I can tell when I'm at that stage that I could make a gesture that completely turns it on its head, or I give it just that right amount of ka-ching and it's done. Um, and so I ask myself when I'm at that stage, is this next technique, effect, line, mark, whatever I'm contemplating doing, um, is this going to make the painting better, or is it just going to make it different? And the answer to that question will dictate my next move. Am I going to execute on this area and, you know, add, embellish something or remove something or whatever it is I'm contemplating doing to change the artwork at that moment. And uh, that could also be applied to life too. You
Yeah, I
know,
was
we
just going to
we
say
get
that.
yeah, we get so wound up in things, and I've learned to step back and say, is this going to make an impact? Is this going to make a difference? And how much, what do I have to do in order to take this to where I feel it should be?
Yeah.
So my general answer to, is a piece done? How do I know when a piece is done? Is, am I making it better or am I just making it different? So
Okay. I just wanted to bring that in because I just happened to think about it, and it is, and it's the same, like you said, same thing with business. Is this thing that I'm doing just spinning my wheels, or is it actually going to make the car go faster? Right? Is it
right. Am I moving the needle or just wasting time, you know?
right? Exactly. Exactly. Well, Alicia, as always, it's been a lovely conversation. I mean, you do have so much to give through your generosity of spirit and your soul, and it comes out in your art. And for those of you who have not seen Alicia's work or are not familiar with her new show, it's at the Patricia Rouser Gallery in downtown Seattle in Pioneer Square on First. You can find that on Alicia's website. How can people get in touch with you, Alicia, first and foremost?
They can find me at my website, aliciatormey.com. And of course, I'm often over on Instagram sharing creative endeavors over there. And it's Alicia at alicia.tormey on Instagram.
And information about your retreats and ability to work with you, is that on your website as well?
It is.
Okay,
It's
great.
pretty easy to navigate once you arrive. You should be able to find your way around the website fairly well. But
And if you
and Sue,
follow her,
thank you.
oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you
you.
because you just glossed over at the beginning that you flew to Idaho to help me wrap and pack artwork, and that as simple and easy and straightforward as that sounds, it's actually very complex when you're handling fine art and especially encaustic.
Yes.
And it's a lot of work, and I really appreciate you jumping in and helping at the last minute. So thank you, Sue.
It was my pleasure. And to see the outcome and to see all of the love at your opening and just feel all of that beautiful energy, it is so worth it. So I'm happy to help. Don't
Thank
call
you.
me again. I'm just kidding. It is a lot of work, but I appreciate it. And what I did was nothing compared to your journey putting together how many pieces? 26? How many total in the show?
A lot.
A lot. Many
A
pieces.
lot.
Many pieces. Yes. So for all of you aspiring artists out there, watch Alicia and go to her Instagram because there's some really juicy, and when I say juicy, I mean Encaustic is juicy. It's
It
beautiful, and
is.
it's just juicy to watch the wax melt and transform and everything. So go to Instagram, go to her website, follow her. You'll learn something about art and about life. There you have it.
Thank you, Sue.
You're welcome. Thank you. And for those of you, if this was inspirational, share it with a friend, follow the podcast, rate us, all of that good stuff to keep us on the air. And I could keep bringing you guests like Alicia. So it is my pleasure to do all of that. And I enjoy this. This is not work to me at all. Thank you for listening. And I will see you next week on Midlife Strategies for Badass Women.